Hello YouTube. Now I've been a part of YouTube with this particular channel for quite some time, and I thought it was about time I made some videos of my own. For the first video, I've decided to do a video response to Johnny over at the Happy Console Gamer, who asked, "Is The Legend of Zelda an RPG?" Now in my personal opinion, The Legend of Zelda is not an RPG, and here's why. While The Legend of Zelda often has similarities to a lot of RPGs, especially with two games in particular in the series, which are Link's Adventure and Majora's Mask, the majority of the series does not have anything in common with an RPG per se, because a lot of things have predetermined paths and certain ways you have to defeat bosses and other enemies. Whereas in RPG in general, there is no set way to defeat a boss, because in most RPGs you don't necessarily require characters that use magic or use melee attacks, etc., etc. You can have a team full of nothing but melee users or a team filled with nothing but magic users and still be able to defeat said boss and still complete the game. Whereas The Legend of Zelda, there are certain predetermined paths on how you have to defeat the boss, such as Phantom Ganon, who does require a combination of the bow and the sword, and whereas Bongo Bongo is similar fashion, whereas the Fire Temple, you require the Magneton Hammer, and pardon me, I do not know how to pronounce the name of the boss of the Fire Temple in Ocarina of Time, but you also require the Magneton Hammer to defeat him as well. And with the boss in the Water Temple, forgive me again, I do not know how to pronounce the name, so I will not attempt and butcher the name. So there are those things where you require the hook shot to defeat that boss. So with most bosses, it requires a certain item to defeat that boss, whereas Majora's Mask has that sort of RPG element where there is no set strategy to defeat the boss. There are many different ways to defeating the bosses, especially Majora's Mask, which I have often heard, no, you need to use the light arrows, or no, you need the Fierce Deity Mask to beat him. I personally used the Zora Mask to defeat Majora's Mask. So, there are certainly different ways to defeat bosses in that game, and especially with Zelda 2, you have the leveling up system where you have the defense increase, and the attack increase, and the life increase. So that's kind of where the series differentiates into RPG territory. But for a majority of the games, there is no RPG feel to them. They are very action-adventure, and even in the two games that have the RPG feels, being Majora's Mask and Link's Adventure, there's still that action-adventure feel, because even though there are the side quests in Majora's Mask and the many ways to defeat the bosses, you're still doing an action-adventure game. In that sense, and especially with Link's Adventure, which I am often told is the worst game in the series. I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but a lot of things like that, and it has those RPG elements, but you're still doing, I guess, while I wouldn't call Link's Adventure an action RPG, I would more call that, no, I wouldn't even call that an action RPG. I would still call it an action-adventure game, because there's still that exploration, even though it's more of a side-scroller instead of an open-world top-down, or in case of the 3D games, an over-the-shoulder camera view. So, with that said, is The Legend of getting mixed up there. Is The Legend of Zelda an RPG? The answer, in my opinion, and throughout my explanation, is no. And, so, this has been my first video, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to my argument on why it is not an RPG, and whether you think it is an RPG, or whether you think it is an action-adventure game, or a different game entirely, there is no denying that the game the game is a great series and is fantastic. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I hope to be making more in the near future. I hope you subscribe, maybe like or share the video, and I will see you all next time here on YouTube.